Hi, Dr. Nelson here from CounselingTransforms.com, where we help our clients achieve their best self, better relationships, and a more balanced life. Today's topic is Relationship Judo, How to Tame Your Teen. So one of the issues we run into is the developmental process that teens have to go through. It involves differentiation from their family of origin. And so what that means in non-psychobabble terms is as teens get older, they are preparing to launch out into the world, and that usually means cutting some ties at home to prepare for that. Now that can be an anxious time for both the teen and parents and loved ones. And sometimes what happens is families will fall into, we call it the family dance. So like patterns of arguing, which are usually more about data than anything of substance. So it's kind of like he says, she says, he says, boom. He says, she says, he says, boom. Same pattern, different day, different data, but it's really just the same argument replaying itself. So one of the things that we have to do is stop that family dance. One of the better ways to do that is identifying some of the less than productive methods that parents use to try to help their teens, specifically lecturing and nagging. Two no-nos when it comes to teenagers. I know it's compulsive because when we care about our teens, then what happens is we worry about them or we're upset and then we default to lecturing and nagging. The difference between the two is lecturing is kind of giving them data like a speech or explaining things, usually over-explaining things. So when I have a family in session with a teenager and one of the parents goes into lecture mode, usually what I do to find out if this is what's going on is I'll pause them for a minute and then I'll say, okay, so hold that thought for a second, parent, and then I'll look at the teen and I'll say, have you got any idea where this is going? And usually they're like, yes. So I said, can you please tell me what you think they're going to say? Usually they're spot on. So they'll say something like, I need to be more disciplined and do my homework and turn it in so that I'll get good grades so that I'll actually graduate and so that they won't have to worry about me living in their basement. Something like that. Then I'll look at the parent and say, did he or she get it? Almost always, probably 95% of the time the parent will go, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Here's the thing. Once they have the data, then that's the end of that conversation. So when they know it, now what the thing to do is rather than reminding them over and over and over and over and causing resistance, it's really to establish some boundaries and some consequences. That's a whole nother topic, and that will be a whole nother relationship judo video. But the idea is once your teen understands, then you don't have to repeat that. The nagging part is reminding and usually is because the parent's frustrated that the teen's not following through on something. Here's another thing. Teens tend to be kind of a little surly, a little moody. They can be lazy. And that's actually pretty normal in most cases, and parents tend to take that personally versus that's just part of the developmental process of a teen and some of the things that go on. So then what happens is if we're kind of falling into those patterns is we tend to argue using things like generalized statements like you don't care. So let's say that you're trying to get your teen to take out the trash, and rather than them addressing that they don't want to take out the trash, they will kind of distract the parent with something like, you don't care, or you don't understand. And then what's a typical response to that? Think about this for a second. Let's say that I'm your teen and you're trying to get me to do something and I'm like, you don't care. What is your instinctive response to that? Usually it is, yes I do, no you don't, yes I do. Now we're doing this again. So one of the best ways to win an argument with the teen is not to argue. So that is why I'm calling this relationship judo. So the thing is, what we do then is we try to understand where they're coming from, and the goal, rather than to be right or to make my point, because when I'm doing that I'm not actually listening, is to help the teen feel heard and understood, and then again using boundaries as a follow-up to deal with the behavior or whatever it is that they need to do, like taking out the trash. But when your teen comes at you with, I call a feeling statement, like you don't care, the technical term for that is projection. So how that works is I'm telling you what you're thinking or feeling or what your motives are. That's actually me making that up and kind of projecting it onto you, almost like a movie screen that I'm playing over you. And if I'm really good at that in my imagination, I can convince myself that that's actually real. And it really isn't. It's me judging me through what you're thinking or feeling. And it's very effective in a kind of dysfunctional way, because if your teen or anybody else for that matter does that, it locks us out. So if someone says to you, you don't care, there is no true objective way for me to prove that they're wrong. And so then what we do is this: yes, I do, no, you don't. Yes, I do, no, you don't. That's a mistake. So when someone is doing that, it's not about whatever the thing is, like taking the trash out. It's usually about something deeper. And one of the best ways around that is to help the other person feel heard and understood. The problem is when someone comes at us with one of those kind of statements, instinct is to get defensive and to argue back and then to prove the point. If I do that, what I'm doing is I'm taking their emotion and I'm kind of chopping it off. So for example, a family member says, we never spend time together, and then the parent or whatever goes, yes we do, no we don't, yes we do, no we don't, yes we do. And then if we, instead of fighting that, we pull on it a little bit, like, help me understand what you mean by that. Then it pops out after a little encouraging, I miss you and I want to spend time with you. So totally different ball game. So a lot of times when someone's upset, they're making an emotional statement and the words that are actually coming out are not accurate or precise or correct. And if we react to that literally, if we take that literally, then we get into an argument and we make things worse rather than better. So another tool that you can use that's very effective with teens and loved ones and basically any relationship is the I feel, I want, or need statement. So that's I feel, insert emotion, and I need, insert behavior, or I want, insert behavior. This takes some practice because in the heat of the moment, usually we want to be heard and we want to win the battle or get them to do what we want. So, for example, I feel frustrated, I need you to take the trash out. Or I feel angry and I need you to change your tone. Or I'm feeling defensive and I need us to take a break and come back to this after I've calmed down, let's say about half an hour. The I feel, I want, or need statements take the you out of it, because when somebody does that, you this, you that, you always, you never, it causes a defensive, kind of hostile reaction in the other person, and they're not interested in hearing what we have to say anymore. So that's what we need to avoid. So some ways to help tame your teen are stop the lecturing and nagging. If they have the data, then what you do is you move towards boundaries and use boundaries with consequences to curb the behavior. Also, don't do the data arguments. Don't fall into that. Let the first barrage of you don't care or whatever it is go by, and then help me understand, I'm not sure where you're coming from. Have them explain it and then reflect that back, like, here's what I'm hearing you say. I'm hearing you say that you're tired from a long day at school, and so you forgot to take the trash out and you meant to but you forgot. Yeah. Okay, I can understand that, but that's where the boundary comes in. However, we have agreed in the behavioral contract that if you don't take the trash out, you're going to lose phone privileges until you do take the trash out. Quick tip on boundaries. Boundaries need to be clearly communicated in advance and enforced every single time to be effective, ideally from a neutral emotional stance. That is the key to behavior modification in teens and loved ones and whoever. That's another way to apply relationship judo, is boundaries with consequences. So there's another video on that in our series. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Dr. Nelson from CounselingTransforms.com.